Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Acolyte podcast. So far, we've made it through our first 2 chapters of Les Mis, and we've met Monsignor Myriel, his sister, and his maid. We are beginning today with Chapter 3, a hard bishopric for a good bishop. And it's a short chapter, so we'll discuss a little. And with that, let us begin. The bishop did not omit his pastoral visits because he had converted his carriage into alms. The diocese of Digne is a fatiguing one. There are very few plains and a great many mountains. Hardly any roads, as we have just seen. 32 curacies, 41 vicarious ships, and 285 auxiliary chapels. To visit all these is quite a task. The bishop managed to do it. He went on foot when it was in the neighborhood, and a tilted spring cart when it was on the plain, and on a donkey in the mountains. The 2 old women accompanied him. When the trip was too hard for them, he went alone. One day he arrived at Senez, which is an ancient episcopal city. He was mounted on an ass. His purse, which was very dry at the moment, did not permit him any other equipage. The mayor of the town came to receive him at the gate of the town, and watched him dismount from his ass with scandalized eyes. Some of the citizens of the town were laughing around him. "Monsieur the mayor," said the bishop, "and messieurs citizens, I perceive that I shock you. You think it very arrogant in a poor priest to ride on an animal which was used by Jesus Christ. I have done so from necessity, I assure you, and not from vanity." In the course of these trips, he was kind and diligent, and talked rather than preached. He never went far in search of his arguments and his examples. He quoted to the inhabitants of one district the example of a neighboring district. In the cantons where they were harsh to the poor, he said, "Look at the people of Briancon. They have conferred on the poor, on widows and orphans, the right to have their meadows mown 3 days in advance of everyone else. They rebuild their houses for them gratuitously when they are ruined. Therefore it is a country which is blessed by God. For a whole century there has not been a single murderer among them." In villages which were greedy for profit and harvest, he said, "Look at the people of Emberne. If at the harvest season the father of a family has his son away on service in the army, and his daughters at service in the town, and if he is ill and incapacitated, the curé recommends him to the prayers of the congregation, and on Sunday, after the Mass, all the inhabitants of the village, men, women, and children, go to the poor man's field and do his harvesting for him, and carry his straw and his grain to his granary. To families divided by questions of money and inheritance, he said, Look at the mountaineers of Devolny, a country so wild that the nightingale is not heard there once in 50 years. While when the father of a family dies, the boys go off to seek their fortunes, leaving the property to the girls, so that they may find husbands. To the cantons, which had a taste for lawsuits, and where the farmers ruined themselves in stamped paper, he said, Look at those good peasants in the valley of Cura. There are 3,000 souls of them, mon Dieu! It's like a little republic. Neither judge nor bailiff is known there. The mayor does everything. He allots the impost, taxes each person conscientiously, judges quarrels for nothing, divides inheritances without charge, pronounces sentences gratuitously. He is obeyed because he is a just man among simple men. To villages where he found no schoolmaster, he quoted once more the people of Kira. "Do you know how they manage?" he said. "Since a little country of 12 or 15 hearths cannot always support a teacher, they have schoolmasters who are paid by the whole valley, who make the round of the village, spending a week in this one, 10 days in that, and instruct them. These teachers go to the fairs. I have seen them there. They are to be recognized by the quill pins which they wear in the cord of their hat. Those who teach reading only have 1 pin. Those who teach reading and reckoning have 2 pins. Those who teach reading, reckoning, and Latin have 3 pins. But what a disgrace! Be ignorant! Do like the people of Kiris." Thus he discoursed gravely and paternally. In default of examples, he invented parables, going directly to the point, with few phrases and many images, which characteristic formed the real eloquence of Jesus Christ. And being convinced himself, he was persuasive. So that closes chapter 3 of Les Mis. And now I'd like to get into a little bit of the commentary that I have on this book and the first 3 chapters afterwards. I don't really want to give any spoilers. I just kind of want to give a little bit of sneak peeks, kind of give you a reason to keep coming back for more. Because I know what we've been given so far is not really telling per se as to what the meat of this story really is. So this story was written in the 19th century, and it's pretty much set in that time, but the way it's written is from an almost future perspective, like it's written in past tense, but the way it's handled like they've taken records, he's taken records of the time. Different accounts of these imaginary made-up characters, so to speak, and that's fascinating to me because it lends to this fantastical sort of introduction that they've done well in paying homage to in the movies and musicals that I've seen. But the meat of this story really speaks on social injustices of the time and of, like, today. That's why I feel it's still very prevalent today. It speaks on unequal wealth distribution and the faults within the justice system and the prison systems of the time. And we all know those are still very prevalent today. And it speaks on corrupt and prideful policing. It doesn't necessarily touch on as corrupt of policing that's handled today, but the police officer in this story is definitely a prideful man. And it also speaks on poverty and its effects on children and women. It speaks on prostitution, and it also speaks on what this will lead a society to do. When you push your populace to its limits, its only option is rebellion, and by the end of the story, that's what we see. Next is my first impressions, or we could call them our first impressions of Monsignor Myriel, who is our introductory character, we shall say. I keep saying they. Victor Hugo is very skilled in the method of show, don't tell, He is telling us, I guess you could say, but he's doing it in a very here are the facts sort of way, with the levers that he shows Monsignor keeping, and just the way he's described. Myriel seems to be a man who carries an air of holiness, and it's apparently played up. Like, it is very clearly played up, and I feel like that is because he's supposed to be portrayed as if Christ continued in life, if he managed to reach an age of maturity, which makes sense, honestly, if you're going to depict the core of a godly man, the man who is the most Christ-like, that makes sense. But they also keep a level of humanity to him that is underplayed. The fact that they mention he began as part of the noble class, that in itself offers opportunity that those class systems, especially of the time, and some today, you can say, just don't offer. The noble class in 19th century France was pretty much your top tier. You had your merchant class below that, and then you had your poverty class, your serf class, your Misérables, and Les Misérables, hence the name of the book. But whereas today you have third class, second class, first class. But that in of itself, back to the point, offers opportunities, say education and connections, depending on the quality of the person and the family that they were born into. But aside from that, that did offer him, obviously, a level of intelligence. Yes, some of that is natural, but yes, that is honed as well. If you don't hone it, you lose it. But he also seems to be a frugal man, but not necessarily in the modern sense. Like, in the modern sense, whenever you consider somebody as frugal, a lot of the times people consider them as closed-fisted, penny pinchers. He's not necessarily a penny pincher. He's just smart. He understands logically the best decision in a course of action. And it's also very clear he cares and he loves his parish. He's doing what he feels is best for his people. That sums up Chapter 3 in my commentary of Les Mis thus far. We shall begin next time with Chapter 4, Works Corresponding to Words. This has been The Acolyte. Thank you for listening. I would love commentary from you in the comments. Leave me what you've taken, what you've thought so far, or any additions or corrections to what I thought so far. Thus is the point of this podcast. Be sure to leave us a like and subscribe. See you next time.